Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of All Things Aged Care Weekly Wrap Up. We've got in the studio our co-host, Anthony Newen, aged care recruitment expert and host of the Pioneers in Aged Care podcast, which we all know and love. He's the guy who's bringing sexy back to aged care through storytelling, while simultaneously recruiting high-level clinical personnel and executives into the sector. If you're open to new opportunities in aged care, all you have to do is connect with Ant on LinkedIn or send your CV to anthony@acrex.com.au. Next up, Rob. It wouldn't be the same without Robert Covino, the founder and CEO of Mirus Australia. He led the creation of technologies like Mirus Metrics and Care Minute Manager, which is now Mirus Plus, an AI-powered platform uniting software and data to streamline everything from admissions to compliance. But the magic doesn't stop there, as they have a whole suite of offerings to unveil soon as they move towards a never-ending goal to make aged care better. Rounding out our hosting crew is myself. I'm about to talk about myself, strategic growth advisor and connector at Mission Critical and founder of Aligned Equity. He's the matchmaker. I am the matchmaker. I will own that behind Mirus Plus, and works across Mirus and Dayspring Care to bring together the right people, strategy and partnerships to unlock real growth in aged care. I'm also a co-founder of Steward, a community connection platform focused on helping people connect, belong and thrive to improve their well-being. And I'm all in on the mission of making aged care better. So we have quite a lineup today. I've got picked up an echo, but I'm hoping everyone's not hearing that. We've got Mark Sewell, a long-term friend of the show, who you know, and I really don't need to provide much of an introduction. Anyone who's been in aged care, except I will say Mark is a long-term committed reformer and advocate of all things aged care and home care. He's worked on the government side of things. He's worked running one of the largest private aged care operators, Warragul, in the southern region and the metro region. The reason I mention that is because Mark had an amazing chapter of his career working closely with Alyssa Walsh, and we're going to hear more about that today. Alyssa Walsh is the Chief Performer, or Brown. Forgive me, Alyssa. You've changed it up, and we'll hear more about that shortly. But Alyssa Brown is the Chief Performance Officer at Apollo Care. So we'll learn all about that title and what that means, with extensive experience leading operational performance, financial sustainability and innovation across aged care services in regional and rural Australia. She's passionate about ensuring older people can age in the communities they know and love. And Alyssa will be discussing the importance of strengthening aged care services in regional Australia, the challenges facing providers outside metropolitan areas, and why accessible, sustainable care close to home matters so deeply for older Australians, their families and local communities. And joining us shortly will be Tanya Southworth. And Tanya is going to talk about her role as the coordinator of the STARS volunteer program in the Wollongong Illawarra region, where STARS volunteers support and assist older people who are stuck in hospital. Not a good thing, and a time that can be stressful, overwhelming for older people and their families. STARS helps older people feel seen, supported and more informed. Oh, we love that. Tanya, you are a superstar. Alyssa's already said that, and an awesome human. And so without further ado, welcome everyone to this full house of all things aged care. We've got quite a show, a little bit going on in the world of aged care and the world in general with the recent budget. So what we wanted to do was kick off the show today. We've got Paul Sadler in the house. Welcome, Paul. We'll raise the roof for you. And I'm doing a one-handed roof. Paul, you wrote a recent article which features on the Inbox website around your response to the budget and where there could be room for improvement. So we've shared that article in advance of this show, but we'd love to hear from you. What's top of mind in terms of, are there any wins? And I'm sure we'll be able to cover them pretty quickly. And then where are the gaps we need to close?
Yeah,
so welcome, Paul Sadler.
Thanks, Owen. There were a couple of wins for the sector. First of all, the government did give its response to the accommodation pricing review. They interestingly deferred most of the decisions and put aside $1.5 billion for future initiatives to support implementing some of the recommendations of the accommodation pricing review. So there were only a couple of new funding initiatives confirmed, and the earliest of those doesn't kick in until next year. So the bottom line was, when you looked at the detail of the budget, there's no short-term relief for providers around accommodation costs. And even if all of the recommendations were adopted from the pricing review, I think it's arguable that that in itself won't be sufficient to really incentivise large-scale construction. The government's own estimate is that their initiatives will support 5,000 extra beds per year. But we know that the demand is actually 10,000 extra
a minimum.
Year.
Yeah.
Yes. So let alone the fact that we've patently fallen behind over the last, 5 years or so, where new builds have been very rare on the ground, partly due to the COVID pandemic, but more significantly due to the massively increasing cost of actually building aged care buildings. So, it's not a very good environment in that regard. With the Support at Home program, the government's made a number of small but important adjustments. They have decided to review the assessment algorithm and the integrated assessment tool. We don't know the details of how that review is going to be conducted and exactly what it's going to be looking at, but it's good news. They've also tinkered with the rules around the end-of-life care access. So you no longer fall off a cliff after 16 weeks and have your funding withdrawn. So that's also good news.
That's good news, yeah.
And of course, the big one that we already knew about was the move to put personal care into the clinical care category. So the budget confirmed that arrangement. The missing pieces, it was very hard to work out how many additional packages had actually been approved for next year. On the first glance, there was no indication of how many additional packages. I went searching through the budget papers and came up with a possible answer, 40,000. The Minister, Sam Ray's, come out subsequently and said it's actually 32,000 packages that are going to be released next financial year. Now, again, just to stay still, we need 34,000 packages each year. And that just keeps us pace with the growth of the population. We're not eating into the waiting list at all if there's only 32,000 additional packages being released. The other big thing that wasn't in the budget was any commitment around the future of the Commonwealth Home Support Program or any funding growth for CHSP. And the CHSP Alliance, which we were talking about last week,
Yes.
has been very vociferous over the last day or so. If you check all the aged care media, I'm quoted right, left and centre today.
Yes.
Talk about that and the failure to resolve it. The Australian National Audit Office report into the effectiveness of CHSP was released yesterday afternoon. It makes for very interesting reading. Might be worth us coming back on all things aged care and actually talking in more detail about what that report contains. But essentially, it confirms what Kathy Eager and I were talking about last week, which is that CHSP is, broadly speaking, a successful program from the point of view of older people and providers, but it's a sorely under-resourced program, and it's actually going backwards in real terms in investment into CHSP since 2021. So the government's got quite a lot to answer for, and successive governments. It's not just the current government. This neglect of CHSP really started under the coalition and has continued under Labor. It's very sad that they've taken a program which used to be the jewel of Australia's care, and they're slowly eroding its value for older people. A stark figure that's in the ANAO report is 51% of people who'd actually been finally successful and got through the door to use a CHSP service said that it wasn't in a timely manner to meet their needs as effectively as it should have done. So half of the people who actually end up getting CHSP have been frustrated getting in and have had difficulties accessing services simply because providers don't have sufficient funding available to enable them to provide the care that they want to provide.
So there's some concerning gaps. Thank you, Paul, for the time that you've taken amidst obviously a busy schedule with the media wanting your response. And obviously we've got the CHSP Alliance building momentum. Just to cover off on that really quickly, you've got some great founding members. You've co-founded that with Kathy Eager. Is there any particular members that you want to mention? And obviously you've got the upcoming forum that we would love people to engage with.
Yes, so the Invox CHSP conference is on the 24th and 25th of August. We actually launched that earlier this week.
Brilliant.
There's going to be a session at the end of the conference for the CHSP Alliance. We're going to call it the CHSP Alliance Summit. We had a talk yesterday about what to do at that particular event, but we've absolutely got some ideas, and hopefully they'll come to fruition on the day, but it is free to register for that component.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
We do encourage people to come along, show your support for CHSP, and hopefully we will be successful in our advocacy around that. Mark Butler made some very positive comments at a breakfast yesterday morning, apparently. So it does look quite likely that there'll be CHSP will continue some form.
Thank you, Paul, for your time on that. And so we've got two people that have I haven't mentioned. So Cheryl, firstly, apologies to you. Thank you. Obviously, great meeting you and hearing about the role you do in Wollongong with the Catholic Diocese. And you're obviously passionate about reform and change in aged care as well. And obviously our co-host has just arrived, Rob Cavino. Welcome, Rob. No doubt you've got a lot to, well, raise the roof for Rob. I gave you the intro earlier, Rob, and ahead of time. And obviously you'll have a few thoughts too, Rob. So in terms of the format for today, how about we talk a bit more about the budget, give each of our guests an opportunity to respond. Alyssa, you're new to the show, so I thought, why not ladies first? Maybe we'll have a response from Alyssa and Cheryl. And obviously, we will also then jump into the Regional Development Investment Forum for Aged Care, which was brilliantly done last week. We'll talk a bit more about that shortly. But firstly, the budget. What do you think, Alyssa?
Yeah, thanks for that, Owen. And thanks for that summary also, Paul. I think largely it's positive, but overall it probably doesn't go far enough. So when we're looking at, the growth in the sector, the workforce shortages, the fact that people aren't developing, and also that there's not enough packages in the system to properly support people at home, there's still a way to go. So I would say it's welcome in the first instance, but we need to go further if we're really creating a sector that meets the needs of older people today and tomorrow and into the future.
Thank you, Alyssa. And obviously we want to hear more about your area of the market. You've got a real focus on regional and where the differences are there too. But firstly, welcome to the show, Cheryl. It's great to have you aboard as a first-time guest. And I don't know, I think you've tuned in before, but tell us first about the budget and then tell us a little bit more about what you do as well.
Thanks, Owen. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I absolutely agree with Alyssa. I think it's a great start for moving forward in a very challenging space as a service provider. So I work in the Wollongong Diocese and oversee our ageing portfolio within Catholic Care Wollongong. We have many funding streams in terms of our aged care portfolio, from support at home to CHISP services. Yes. We are an active member of the Alliance and love absolutely everything you're doing, Paul. We really support it and a backing in terms of the continuity of the program. We have many people waiting on wait lists for both service types under CHISP, so we can absolutely appreciate the rationale to retain the overall funding. But as you mentioned, yes, Owen, I'm a very passionate person in aged care from a senior executive level, but also from a personal level. I think we talked about it last week around the fun sandwich generation. I'm in that user experience with both my parents, so have a big passion in that space and being one of the old school nurses in the industry as well. So I've come from a long time background of the old hack days, so I absolutely appreciate the CHSP retaining and looking at the ability to maintain services for clients in the community at a low level, as opposed to the higher level once they get to support at home. And I think it's really important we continue that to ensure that we can keep clients at home longer and they're on a low level system, and it's more agnostic to their individual care needs at the time, as opposed to trying to fit them in for the long term funding element, which will never happen.
And Cheryl, thank you to all the nurses out there. It was International Nurses Day this week, and I saw, Alyssa, you did a great post in support of the nurses across the Apollo organisation. I didn't actually give you an opportunity to talk about your current role. Where there's going to be two phases, which is talk about Apollo and regional and what you're doing there, and then we'll circle back around to talk about your long-term role with Mark. So we've got a bit to cover there.
So just talk about my role now, Owen.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so my role is Chief Performance Officer, which sounds like a very fancy title. It's it's largely working across all of the business and working with our sites to ensure that we're financially sustainable and looking at constantly improving what we do so that we drive better outcomes for older people in particularly regional Australia. And we help those businesses that were at, I guess, threat of closing to actually maintain those critical aged care services in the region. And so they're not just surviving, but we're really looking to make those community assets and that community care thrive. So that's effectively my role.
It's an absolutely brilliant model where you keep the good of what's going on in a regional area and then you enhance it. And so we'd love to. We had your CEO, Stephen Beshy, on the show, and it was just eye-opening, the innovative approach that you have to maintaining the best of both worlds. Which we'll get you to talk a bit more about. And obviously him and Barry Ashcroft and John, what visionaries to sort of meet that need in regional. But Mark, we haven't forgotten about you. We could never forget about Mark Stall. Mark, what do you think of the budget? And then we'll go to Rob.
Yeah, sure. I couldn't hear everything Cheryl said, but I can certainly hear the others. So I hope I don't repeat, although I'd be delighted to repeat what Cheryl says because I know it's always good. But can I mention 4 things that I'm deeply concerned about? Firstly, the funding of beds. It's really, really important that the government has stepped up. There's almost 2 sides to this coin. It's really good to see their commitment to capital funding the opening of beds. As Paul said, 10,000 are needed, and we've missed a few years, so we're actually way ahead of 10,000 being needed. They're going to fund 5,000. What we often don't talk about is the net need of beds, and I don't know how many thousand are teetering on the edge of closure. And every time, Paul knows, every time we've done studies across the Illawarra-Shoalhaven region of the number of beds being built, we find similar numbers being closed. So unless we get ahead of this game, we're going to have to be building more than we close. And I fear that many times new beds open in an area, the older ones nearby close down. In fact, but the capital commitment is really important. There are just 640 beds with DAs approved in the Illawarra-Shoalhaven region to add to the 1,000-bed gap. None of them have got a start date, not one bed.
Wow.
So, it needs more than just funding. It needs planning. It needs support. The operating returns are going to have to be better as well. But it's a really good move, but it has got some big gaps in it unless we do it properly. The second thing I want to mention is those home care packages. 32,000 packages in the supported home program. Really good. We know that there's many, many more people waiting for assessments and many, many more people waiting for services. Just this week, I think it was, a groundbreaking study across the Illawarra-Shoalhaven found that 20,000 people over the last 3 years who were approved at home and approved for aged care. So they were at risk of hospitalisation or residential care or high-level packages. 47% of that 20,000 have not got any aged care service. Approved, assessed and approved, but nothing at all. And we know there's very large numbers of those ended up in hospital within the 12 months after. So we've actually, 32,000 is great, but it's not going to solve the problem, and there will still be hundreds of thousands of Australians waiting for assessment or assessed and approved but not getting the services they need. The third thing I want to say is this CHSP reform and proposal that Paul and Kathy have started, that many people have joined, is actually a really big strategic piece for Australia. CHSP, not many people know what that means in the public. Many older people themselves and their families don't know what it means. But what it actually is going to become pitched as, I think, is the primary care level for aged care. And we understand going to the GP is quick and accessible and affordable, and we get a lot of advice, medical advice. We know the difference between that and going to general hospitals as the secondary tier. We know the difference between that and going to specialist care up the stream. But aged care has got CHSP as the primary level. That primary level needs to operate like the medical healthcare primary level system, primary health.
Yes.
And imagine if we had that kind of quick, easy, no wrong door access to aged care. That's what this CHSP Alliance is starting to shape up and recommend for Australia. So I would recommend people have a close look at it and think about which piece of the aged care system is missing and that needs to work really well to give everyone assurance. And can I be a bit dark in my last comment? And that's to say, imagine if we can't meet the bed need, and imagine if we can't meet the need for home care or have a primary aged care system. We will have a lot of people as boomer populations grow enormously, not from 65 plus, but from 80-year-old plus from this year onwards. We're going to have a lot of people without support. And I assume informal care will have to step up in an enormous way. Family members will have to leave their jobs, take carers leave. Neighbourhoods will have to come together. There'll be a lot of people who don't get anything, but a lot of people will need their family to help. And that's an enormous burden on families, particularly women, in fact, who have been able to rejoin the workforce and contribute to the Australian economy since the 1950s and 60s when aged care grew rapidly. We're going to undo some of those enormous gains unless we get this right. It's, as Professor Eager often says, it's penny pinching, but it's stupid for the pounds. We have to get this right. Invest in it now because it has wide effect on the whole economy. So that's my Friday special view about the bleak, dark future of Australia unless we get this right. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Mark. Even when you go dark, you do it with a smile.
Well, I'm the closest there of any of you, so I have to stay good-humoured.
Well, you don't look at Mark. I think everyone in the studio would not be surprised by that.
It's amazing. It's amazing what a camera filter can do.
A good filter. That's right. And Rob, what's your view on everything?
Well, I've got some views, but it's very similar to the group. But I did have an individual question for each of our panelists because we want to really hear about what they are bringing, and their views on these. But I mean, I guess I'll start with Paul. I think I want to be fair to the government for a moment, and let's name what's generally good in here before we name what's missing. And I think we have those points of view. But Paul, I guess specifically first, walk us through the $1 billion to reclassify showering, dressing, and continence as clinical care from October 1st. And why does this matter to a 78-year-old at home in Wollongong and in the Illawarra region who's currently being asked to co-contribute for that shower?
Yeah. So what you had was full-aged pensioners who, on the face of it, are only up for 5% of the cost of the service. But when you talk about personal care, that's a service they might be getting as much as twice a day, 7 days a week. And it was simply pricing people out of a capacity to get basic care, which they want to be able to go about their day. The government, credit to it, heard the concerns. They didn't hear them when people in the sector raised them when it was first announced, because everybody could see that this was going to happen, except the people in Canberra who were actually doing it. But give them credit. They have responded. They've fixed the problem, though not immediately, not until the 1st of October. But, from the 1st of October, those services which are much needed will be free for all older people,
That's great. Yep.
and full-age pensioners.
Which is a great win and a real tribute to the amazing advocacy efforts that have been undertaken by Invox and CHSP Alliance and yourself, Kathy, Roland, and a number of the. Is there anyone else you particularly want to mention on the win there? Just before we move on from that, Paul, because it was an amazing lobbying effort.
Yeah, I think lots of people deserve credit. Aging Australia
Yes.
did their bit. Council on the Aging, National Seniors,
OPAN.
Network.
Yes.
Yeah. Nearly everybody was raising it as a major issue.
And I think
these are key founding partners of the CHSP Alliance too, and so there's a long list now, 40 plus organisations.
We're up to 138 members.
Wow.
Okay,
that's
well done.
Fantastic.
That's brilliant.
Well, that's great. And Alyssa, the next question I just had for you on specifically how this relates to Apollo as well. So 1.7 billion in capital subsidies, 1.1 billion provisioned for the accommodation supplement restructuring, and then an additional payment for homes with more than 60% of low means residents. So Apollo Care exists specifically to keep regional not-for-profit homes open. Does this change enough for you and your business model that Steve and the group are running over there?
It's a good question. I think we are committed to building new beds. We've already started that. So the homes that are in our alliance of not-for-profits, we have already been looking at where we can build new beds. We just built 26 new beds in Tenterfield in New South Wales. We've got a number of other developments up at Rockhampton and Marani in Queensland. We're looking at Harden. We're looking at down in the Bays in Victoria. So we're already looking at what we can do in our own portfolio. But we are also interested in new greenfield opportunities across Australia, because we really do believe that the demand is there, and we want older people to be able to get aged care where they live, 2 minutes down the road, not 2 hours down the road, not relocating from their loved ones, where they've grown up, everything that's familiar. We want people to have access to critical services in the places that they know and they love.
Can I just jump in here, Rob, just to I really wanted to capture the working relationship. Mark, you worked with Alyssa for a number of years at Warrigal. The fact that we've got you both in the studio today, tell us a little bit about that time together at Warrigal and the journey you went on together.
Yeah, well, Alyssa knows this very well too. Before Alyssa came, I came to Warrigal from government. And Paul and I know what it's like to go from government to the funded or the private sector. And I was a bit shocked after 20 years of disability, child protection and ageing with New South Wales government to go to a not-for-profit organisation. I thought, this will be interesting to go to the funded sector, see what they're like, and then I'll come back to government where it all happens. And what I discovered was that actually it all happens out there on the ground. And organisations, not-for-profit organisations particularly, but private organisations can be quite nimble and responsive. I couldn't believe that I would have a discussion with my organisation about something. We'd have a discussion and then they'd all look at me and we'd say, well, let's just do it. I was so used to briefing ministers and going through various committees and getting internal, external and governmental finance profiles on everything we decided. So the risks were much higher, of course, because we were on our own with no backup, but we also had that nimble, quick, responsive approach. Now, talking about Alyssa, one of the things that not-for-profit organisations, like the one I went to, did have was it had incredible courage. and intuition and engagement with the local community. And it had grown for 60 years or 40 years before I came, just off the back of need and people making things happen locally and really inspiring, courageous local people who were involved in soccer teams and Rotary clubs and Lions clubs and working at council, but all this sort of work for Warragul was on the side. What it didn't have, and this is what Alyssa brought, and that was that kind of intelligent strategy and the access to capital and large-scale either capital development or acquisition partnerships that could have brought a professionalism to do more than just apply your own courage and your intuition. And my 20 years or so at Warragul, really aged care moved from cottage industry to needing a lot of IT and systems and understanding the data and the needs, just not knowing as many people as possible and feeling I knew their stories and what they needed, but actually counting the data, measuring it, disclosing it to the government, counting the national data sets to see how we benchmarked and compared. Also the innovation strategy. What does it take to get an organisation of not just 100 people, but 1,000 people to innovate, and what needs innovation? What's Japan doing? What's the Netherlands doing? What's Asian country? What are the Asian communities doing? So all of that combined with taking risks, but in a measured way, Alyssa brought those kind of skill sets and added enormously. The other tip I'll give for anyone who's thinking, yeah, we need a specialist in innovation and strategy and risk and partnerships, I would say Alyssa had to work directly to me. I couldn't put her or her role inside the finance team because the finance team was very risk averse and cautious and making sure the place stayed afloat and the doors were stayed open. I couldn't put her and her functions in the HR team. You've got to look after your people. You've got to not upset your people, and innovation, risk, growth is very upsetting to most people who are hanging on to very complex roles. And I couldn't put her in the ops team, who again are about quality services for the existing mix, not thinking new territories and how we can expand this dramatically to meet unmet need. So Alyssa was a godsend for me and for Warragul, adding those things and taking us to complete new levels, but had to be given the authority to make it work. And there's lots of lessons that both Alyssa and I talked to people about during this great era. And of course, a lot of aged care places have tried those things or done those things or seen those things, but it was a winning combo for a lot of rapid building development and then a series of acquisitions that doubled the size of the organisation.
Wow.
Mark, just on that,
Yes.
on that point too. So in the budget, 20 additional specialist dementia care units and the hospital to aged care dementia support program, which is expanding from 11 now to 20 locations. And I think that's brought through Hammond Care. But with your role in specifically the Illawarra, and I know Paul and Nikki Sloan as well is working on that. You consult in that health aged care interface quite regularly. Will this actually move people out of hospital beds?
It may in small numbers. One of the things we saw, the Illawarra ran one of those trials of the dementia specialist transition support and discovered that hospitals weren't ready to negotiate well with aged care providers. Aged care providers weren't trusting of hospital systems, their care records, black-marked people who wandered into somebody else's room. They were medicated to dampen their difficult behaviours, and that was not all disclosed or understood by aged care providers. And most, as you know, Rob, it's a good question because most aged care providers don't operate on what I talked about before, courage and engagement. They're operated now on careful risk and avoidance of compliance challenges. So they're not, with enormous demand, they're not likely to take people who are challenging to manage. That's one of the clear categories that are mostly ending up stranded in hospital. I think there are plenty of organisations, Alyssa's would be one of them, who really want to do the best by the local community and believe that people should stay regionally if they can, and who understand families. There are families who've got people working in aged care, they've got other people through aged care, and then here comes Auntie June, who has dementia. She deserves a fair go as well. And she deserves to live in that community and to live not in a hospital but in an aged care environment. They will do everything they can to improve their dementia specialisation and provide a home, but it won't happen on a widespread scale, and it won't happen without a lot of resources. When I was in disability care, we rolled out residential group homes right across New South Wales. Previously, people were in institutional settings. There were a whole lot of people with difficult, challenging behaviours who were left behind. There were specific organisations that needed extra funding, extra support, extra staffing, a lot of training and advice. They needed specialised environments, and that's what led to great services being established for people with challenging behaviours to live together in the right environment. But you can't just expect a generic accommodation aged care environment to do the heavy lifting and provide services for these people.
Can I just jump in there, Mark? We do want to capture your side of that story, Alyssa. Obviously, a great rap from Mark about your impact on Warrigal and bringing some different thinking. What was it like working for Mark? And what was that journey like for you?
Oh, yeah. What can I say on screen? So I was very blessed to work with Mark for about 5 years. It was 4 or 5 before he decided to, go off into early retirement.
How dare you?
Early.
I know, how rude, right? So I was lucky. We had a coffee actually in Shellharbour, and it was over that coffee that actually led to my employment at Warrigal. It's a great organisation, and it was actually a really fantastic role. It was the role that kept growing, actually. I think the role I came into and the role I left were slightly different. Mark's one of those people that his brain doesn't stop, and he's always thinking about things that we can do better or more of, to reach more people and to help more people. So there were a lot of things that didn't fit anywhere else that came to my portfolio. But it was a great role. And as Mark said, we did grow a lot during that time. And that is also a really exciting thing when you work for an organisation that is committed to that social duty, I guess, of being really invested in aged care and developing more opportunities for more people to get those critical services. It's actually one of the reasons I came to Apollo, was because Apollo was specifically targeting and wanting to invest in regional Australia. And I knew from my experience that a lot of providers were potentially opting out of regional and outer regional because, quite frankly, there are more challenges in those areas in terms of attracting talent, key worker, housing shortages, and you're heavily dependent, say, on agency staffing. So I really liked the idea of growing aged care in regional and outer regional Australia. So yes, I started that growth journey with Warrigal, and I've been lucky enough to continue it. But, as far as Mark, you can't say a bad word about the man. He was a wonderful leader and an inspiration to me personally. And I've learnt a lot from him, and I'm blessed to still have him in my life and continue to learn from him, whether he likes it or not. He actually does take some talks.
You're stuck with him, Mark.
I know, it's like that pesky person that doesn't go away. But yeah,
Well, and I just had a final question. Oh, sorry, go, Mark.
I was just going to say, one of the great things about Australia and the aged care system and network in particular is there's a very strong collegiate commitment. I think it's because we understand what older people need and what communities need, and we are deeply worried together that the government's not keeping up and we're not really going to be able to address the need, and we worry deeply about what will happen. And when you get people in and you have a spark and you get things happening, you just appreciate them for the rest of their lives, because you actually made a difference and you filled a gap or you made things happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everyone you have on this show only comes on because they want to do that and they spark that. And it's not just providers; it's also the whole network of services and associate providers. Everyone. I mean, I've met food service companies who employ cooks and run kitchens in aged care, who just feel completely compelled by the need that they're meeting the needs of people and providing meals. Because we know most older people don't care about the medications; they just want the meals to be right at lunchtime.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Yes.
And the wine at night. Happy hour.
Happy hour.
Hey.
And
With
what
past
was
health.
Alyssa, I do want to capture this a little bit. So Mark created a space where you could innovate and you could be nimble and you could try new things.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point. I think in our sector, innovation is potentially stifled somewhat because we're highly regulated. Funds are, we're not rolling around in funds. And so it can be a bit more of a challenging environment to innovate. I'm one of these people that thinks innovation doesn't have to be a big I. It's often your little I. And it's often because you're really engaged with your local communities and with your workforce and with the people actually receiving your services. And if you're really connected to people, you can be the head of innovation like I was at Warragul, but I'm not the one with all the big ideas, although I do have a lot of ideas and I'm always kind of challenging the status quo. But if you're actually engaged and connected, you will hear a lot of wonderful things from people and communities that you just need to actually act on and follow through. I'm actually at Apollo. I sit on every single workforce committee across our 14 homes. So I am with the workforce every month, listening to them, talking to them. We're talking about KPIs and we're talking about our performance, and we're also talking about strength and standards. We're talking about the resident experience, and they're telling us, we think you should try this, or we should do this, or how about that? And I think for me, and I know for Stephen, it's such an important committee. I think Stephen says it's his most important committee, even though he's got board meetings and the like. Right. But it's such an important committee because we're connected to people, the people that matter, because quite frankly, the people on the ground are way more important than me. And they're the ones that make things happen and deliver beautiful moments that matter each and every day.
Love that, Alyssa. Right. Now, Rob, I know you have to leave shortly.
Well, I had I'm going to go back to Cheryl on to round out these points. Please. But so Cheryl, I guess so to put you on notice. So inside there's a $389 million for the support at home. Now there's $40 million going onto the ongoing assessment, hardship applications, this end of life pathway, and a review of the integrated assessment tool, which we've heard a lot about. Now, as someone who deals with this, the assessment processes daily, where does that land with you and your organization?
Yeah, no, really good question. Firstly, I just want to know where I get an Alyssa and a Mark from, because that would be
love that. Yes.
Well, this is where you plug in.
They're both my head, and that's what makes me spin every day with the operational lens on as well. But no, for my role, it is quite operational. I do hear and see a lot of the implications on the integrated assessment tool, right down to the ground level of the implications on the individual client in their home, the carer that's wrapped around them, and the confusion of making sure they're saying the right things at the right time in order for the algorithm to pick up exactly what their care needs are. That's a battle. Again, it's great to hear from the budget from the budget release information that's being looked at. It is a fundamental system issue that every single provider and every single care recipient, unfortunately, that's on the scheme, that's waiting, that is involved, is actually impacted by. It's a lot of our discussions, and it's a lot of our explanations to our clients around their particular care needs. But it's also a bit of a double-edged sword, as you want people to be able to provide the right information at the right time for their assessment for their needs to be met. But when they're 18 months down the track getting that assessment and then getting the allocation, you're 18 months out of date, to be completely honest. So
Yes.
the poor clients are 18 months in aged security not getting any services. So it is that unfortunate backlog of the system, in terms of we're meeting and trying to meet a need now and a challenge now with an algorithm, which is a great initial challenge and great something to tackle head on now. But we've got participants, we've got carers, we've got family members that have been in the system for, you could say, 2.5 years, that are already 2.5 years behind. So that's something we deal with daily in terms of new clients coming on the scheme, grandfathered clients being reassessed, and then you've got your early requirements of services that clients just want domestic assistance to make sure they can get down their back stairs and not fall down safely, so they're not landing themselves in hospital with that early intervention. So again, we talked about it at our innovation meeting last week, which was so impactful around the bed block issues, and that we're 15 years behind where we should be with that thinking, in terms of making sure we've got early intervention services that the clients in a 5-year trajectory aren't being admitted for. And that's where we've got that backlog. So we're really challenging and balancing a few stages of the outcomes. And I think that's the part of the challenge of providers and speaking for us locally in Illawarra. Again, we have an amazing ageing cohort that stays in home for longer than anyone in Australia. Thanks, Kathy, for that information.
Yes,
so we do
Kathy.
something really well in making sure they stay at home for as long as they can. It's just making sure we can wrap that long-term service around their care needs and be agnostic to their changing clinical needs, not stagnant in their original assessment that they got 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was my answer to my very long answer to your question.
No, that's exactly what that's saying it. And Paul, you've had some statements about this as well. You said an honest assessment of support at home at a home 6 months in concludes it's a failure for older people. Now the budget tweaks it, assessments, hardship, end of life, but doesn't restructure it. So what should providers do this week with what they've actually been given?
Yeah. So look, there are certainly things providers can do within the current structure. That was one of the main focuses of the Invox Support at Home conference was, what can you do and what can you manage in your own right. But this program still needs major surgery. It really needs start all over again, to be honest. There are still some significant problems. If you look at the wait times report, which we haven't really talked about so far today, which was released on budget day, brackets buried on budget day, close brackets. People are waiting an average of a year. 364 days, just shy of a full year, to get a supported home service. Now, that's the average. That means that lots of people are taking longer than that. Yeah. And Kathy Eager pointed out a really sensible point to me when we were chatting about that report. She said, well, if you take out the people who are actually on the urgent pathway, who do by and large get services within a month or at most a couple of months, that means the rest of the people who are waiting are waiting 2+ years. And that is the feedback that Invox regularly gets through our question and answer page, is there are stories of people waiting incredibly long times, and absolutely some of those people pass away, without ever having received a service. And that just backs up the statistics that Kathy and I have found, that 47% of people assessed in the Illawarra region as eligible for some form of aged care never receive it.
That is an absolute tragedy. I'm glad we're talking about it. I do want to mention Lou Fox, who's involved with the local health district of the Illawarra and Southern region. She is looking forward to attending the show next week and to talk about some of the objectives and the outcomes of the investment forum last week. For those who are tuning in next week, what are some of the discussion points that we covered that you felt we should really address in the show next week? Alyssa, you were there. Cheryl, Mark, you presented. What would we like to dig into?
I think it's more solution focus, I guess. It was great to start the conversation, but there's much more conversation to be had. And from an innovation perspective, where is that in the future of aged care? And how do we get out of our own way to actually create real, tangible beds? Let's get these beds on. I think there's a question here about, if a provider CEO watching this with the CFO, what's the one thing they should put on the agenda for the next board meeting? May I be as bold to say is, where is our investment in aged care into the future? And not just say beds, but also investing in the upgrade of your current homes and stock. So, I think that would be the one thing I would say. Strategically, what are we doing to ensure that aged care is here for good and that people who need services now and into the future can actually receive them?
Yeah, brilliant. And there was a focus on your talk around the actual numbers of progress and the gap with need, Mark. But in summary, you're going to speak in more detail on this next week. But what should people expect that we're going to? And we also want to give a shout out to Selena Stevens and the regional development team and a brilliant job that they did.
Yeah, it was terrific to have another group unpack this with other people in the room, people who had not heard the problem before. Many people don't think aged care is actually a housing supply and demand problem, because that's where people are going to live. Their own houses are held in limbo while they're stranded in hospital. So that's a crying shame as well. How to meet the demand? I mean, it's hard enough to meet the general housing demand. What about specialist aged care housing? But there are things that could be done. Why isn't capital funding and project resources targeted to existing services to expand the bed numbers at existing homes? New builds, greenfield new builds, starting from scratch with DAs and adding all the common areas, very expensive and slow, but adding in additional beds to existing services has to be looked at more closely. What about group-based activities? I've often said this, that people getting together for day respite clubs, day respite centres, group activities are not really funded properly and are not part of the service system, but they have been in the past. This race to individual transaction-based care is very isolationist and expensive, so we need to be thinking about where does that fit. And of course, health will have to step up. If most of these people are going to be in hospital for the rest of their lives, health may need to step up and establish much better places with geriatric good care for people to live. And some states are doing it. New South Wales may need to do it more. And informal carers, as I said earlier, families caring, doing all the wraparound support. When someone gets even a high-level home care package, it's only about 10 or 11 hours a week. The rest of the time is all the family support and neighbours support. Who supports them and where is that in the system? So there's some of the things that have to be addressed as well. And some of those things are much easier than tackling the fundamental core gaps.
The other
and
thing,
obviously, sorry, Paul.
we're going to be doing in about 3 weeks time, holding a session at the in the provision service. So we're exploring that.
I think we got that as we stand out. But thank you everyone for your time today. We've had a great discussion on the budget. We've had such amazing perspectives. Alyssa, Cheryl, Paul, and Mark, thank you. 4 very different advantages on the same budget. And
yes, thank you.
What you've been giving us today is something that the press releases will never give us, which is the honest read on the situation, and that's really what this is about. So thank you again for your contributions. Owen,
and
can I throw it
Cheryl,
over
we'd
to you?
love to have you back. There'll be a focus on Wollongong and the recent aged care investment forum. So if you would like to join us, obviously with Lou Fox coming back and the amazing work she does with Margot Mains as well. So many people to shout out to, obviously Nikki Sloan and what she's doing with the Health and Aged Care Task Force with you, Mark, and so many more people to mention. But thank you for today. A brilliant discussion. We've covered some good ground. And as we say in our show, all for one and one for all things aged care. Let's make aged care better together.
Agreed.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank you all.
afternoon.